Joining us now is the Children's Services Levy group here. We have Tanya Burnett. You're the Executive Director of Children's Services, correct?
Yep.
Babs Legeza, who is the Financial Director.
Yes.
And then Chuck Lafferty, who is the President of the Children's Service Board. Am I correct on that, Chuck?
That's true.
Okay. And that is coming up. Tanya, is this a renewal or what?
No, this is actually a new levy that we are asking for. It's a 0.5 mil levy
0.5.
To help us make up the difference between the cost of all of the additional children we have in care now. We've had a 41% increase since 2010 of kids needing to come into our care. The drug problem has, as you see in the newspapers and you all hear about, it just kind of, exploded. And for us, that means there are more children living in situations that are not safe.
Right.
And so the funding is what, the issue for us. We just, with that additional amount, we're spending close to $450,000 more a year than we did 3 years ago to cover, for that. So.
I'm not sure whether, Babs, if you can answer this or not, but say in a $100 value house, $100,000 value house, do you know how much that would cost us?
Yes, it'll be $17.50 a year, $17.50.
That's it?
Yep. Yeah.
That's cheap.
Right.
That's not bad at all.
Right.
Very, very cheap. It was pennies a day then, or if that.
Right.
Yeah.
Chuck, how long have you been with the board?
25 years, give or take a year.
Really?
Yeah.
That long?
Well, it's not that long,
5 years is a long time.
I went on the board when I was 5 years old.
Yeah, right. You were just a mere child.
25 years. It's been a great experience. I've been there through a number of changes in leadership, and we're doing well. And I've been the president for. I could be off on this. This might be my fourth year of being president, but it's a wonderful thing, and
could you explain, Chuck, for those out there that might not be aware what Children's Services actually does?
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
We're the Child Protection Agency for the county, and we're where cases of abuse and neglect are investigated, and the kids are taken care of, and it's a spectacular, difficult job because we have all the caseworkers that go into the home in the event of an emergency and provide protection for the kids. They have to relocate them. We have foster homes, foster parents. It's a heartbreaking, rewarding profession that we have. It's not a very well-paid profession either. And we have an extremely dedicated staff. And as you look in the newspaper and you see all the tragedies in the county over drugs and the rising drug situations, these devastate families. That's the huge thing. Our placements are way up, and the cost of placing a child in a care facility to receive professional care, it's escalating. The numbers that we put into professional care are escalating, and the incidence of children born subject to drug dependency because their mother was on drugs, that's gone up. So I don't want to say too much because I'm just on the administrative board, but I think that's what I said is probably true, right, Tanya?
Right. Last year we've had 2,766 calls.
How many?
2,766.
You're kidding.
People who were concerned about a child for one reason or another. And we ended up opening over 960 new cases last year.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but like if a kid gets taken, a young one gets taken to the hospital with bruises and that sort of stuff, that's where they go to, is you, right? To say, it looks like this child may have been abused.
Right. We get calls from hospitals. We work with all of the police departments in the county. Sometimes they get called out to home. There might be an incident going on between mom and dad, or a drug raid or something, and if kids are involved, so we come. They call us. The schools are great reporters because they see the kids every day. So really, anybody can call us, but those are our big callers right there.
We had a couple instances on police. Chuck knows this, that we get police reports here every day, and over the last year or 6 months, there was like little kids that might wander off from their house and they're wandering around in their diapers or whatever. Those cases are probably
Right, we get called about those, right? Especially when you have little ones and they can't figure out who they belong to. We'll get those calls and we try to figure out, work with the police department to figure out what home they came from and what's the situation at home.
How do you, now here's a question I've always had, and I know you probably can answer it. How do you, in certain cases, Chuck and I have got kids, and I'm sure you guys do too, but what about the kid that wanders off that you might have been not paying attention to, and you're really innocent of anything? How do you?
That happens.
How do you
Kids are
protect?
sneaky.
How do you? Yeah. How do you protect the parents so that
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
we've had many times. We've had it's a set. Parents are stressed these days, doing what they can to make ends meet. We've had moms working third shift, coming home and they fall asleep. They've fallen asleep, and the 3-year-old sneaks
Tired.
out the door because she wants to go play with the dog.
Yeah.
We've had that happen with those exact situations.
How do you
So-
handle that then?
So we have to get we get the calls, so we get involved and we go talk to mom. We find out what happened, and we just give them suggestions like put a latch on the door. We can get the alarms for the doors. Those ones that you open the door and it beeps and stuff. Something that might help, or suggest ways. Is there someone who can watch a child so you can get a few hours of sleep? But we just talk with them about it. It's nothing that we have to stay involved with, or that really just was an unfortunate accident, and those things do happen.
So you
we
understand
recognize
it.
that.
Because I remember in the old days they were a little. It seemed to me, but it seemed to be a little bit more stricter than.
And maybe, yeah, right. And I've heard those. That was before my time too. Probably, working
Yeah,
with
yeah.
children's services. But yeah, we really, it's more about strengthening families, keeping families together,
And you're not there to separate them.
no.
You're there to
and,
keep
and
them
in fact,
together.
our first goal is, if a situation isn't safe for a child, is to find a family member or someone that the child knows, because we know that when we would take the child out of a home, no matter what's going on, it's traumatic for them to have to leave that home. It's another trauma that's going to happen to them. So we
Right.
try to find somebody that they know they can stay with. That's our first goal, and then when that can't happen, then we look to our foster families.
Seems to me, Chuck, when we were kids, that my dad was a social worker for veterans, but it seemed to me they had a place called, and I don't know whether they still do or not. He always called it the children's home.
Yeah, that's where we started.
Yeah.
Is that what is that?
Yeah.
Is that still in effect?
Well, that's what we evolved from. Ron Lewis was the first
Yeah,
director of,
Ron, yeah.
of the organization, and there was a staff in the beginning. Pat Burks. There was a staff of about 4 or 5 or 6 in the beginning, and the commissioners called them in one day and said that they had a mandate from the state that we needed to have a protection agency for children, and had him come in, and one or two of the other folks, and he left that day, and I still have a great relationship with him. I'm a friend of his, and he said, so we walked out the door and we said, okay, well, what are we going to do now? And that's how it started. And it was in the home right by where the football stadium is there
Yes.
at Braden
Right.
Junior High School.
Right.
It was in that building right there. And that place was there, heck, I don't know, in the 70s, I suppose. I can't recall
Oh,
when,
probably,
when,
yeah.
when it wound down.
Yeah.
But that's how it started.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you want to talk about how things have changed, and that's where we went from having children in those kind of homes, where you could have 30 kids, I don't know, however many at that time may have been in that home.
Oh, yeah.
To think, to realizing that kids do better when they're with families, and so.
So is that
the
what
goal
you, is that where you get them into foster
Right.
homes? Is that
Right.
what you do?
Yep, yep.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, Tony, how many of the cases that you investigate are generational?
Well, that's a tough one. Quite a few. I mean, if we look back, there's probably a situation where we knew that parent as a child, or we had some kind of involvement. I don't have an exact statistic on that, but it does happen. But what we find out too, though, it's sometimes that by the time now we're looking at the grandparents and saying, could they take this child? Things have changed, or they've matured, or whatever their issues were. They're still, we can work with them as a family unit and still try to make things work.
Is there a solution to preventing this and stopping this from running into generation after
We're
generation?
trying. There's a group of us now that all the agencies are getting together actually, and it's I just was involved with Family and Children First Council, I don't know if you remember them, and so we work on things like there's a generational poverty discussion going on and talking about, it's called Bridges Out of Poverty, that we're all the different, there was an article in the paper I think not too long ago about that, so that we're all trying to get together, figuring out what can we do to help families who are in these situations get out of them, so that we don't just keep perpetuating the cycle that we do see.
Kind of to augment what you said earlier, in these police reports, it's daily. we get reports, and Chuck knows this as an attorney, that it's daily. We are getting reports of the drug abuse that is going on out there. We had Billy Johnson, the sheriff, on here a couple weeks ago. He said it's completely out of hand. He goes, when he first started out as sheriff, it wasn't this bad. It just keeps continually getting worse.
Well, the drug users get smarter. They find out a way to help, with the meth problem. They made it more difficult to get the things to manufacture meth. Well, now they figured out a different way to make it, or they figure out, so it's always changing, and you got to try to stay one step ahead of them. And then, unfortunately, it's the children that get caught in the middle of all that. And,
Absolutely.
And then we get the calls. And,
Yeah.
we had 57 babies or their mothers tested positive last year at birth.
You're kidding.
Right. No. Just in this county.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So in other words, if they're users, that it transmits to the child, the infant.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the babies have extreme difficulty at birth. They're addicted. They're born addicted to that drug, and they have to be weaned off of it in many cases, depending on how severe it is. So
What about alcohol? Does that?
too, right? There's fetal alcohol syndrome that is a result of moms using, and that actually can sometimes be worse depending on how often they drank and how much during the pregnancy.
Babs, how long have you been with the organization?
3 years?
Has it been 3 years?
Yeah,
Really?
3 years, yeah.
So you're saying basically that it's only $17 and some change a year to help make this happen.
Right,
Help us
right.
make up
And we,
what's
yeah, and we were talking about how we work with the families, and so we have a staff of about 30 of social service staff that works with those families, because you need, it's a lot of manpower to go talk to people, because we go out to their houses, and so I mean that's a large part of our budget, but we have reduced our staff by 20% over the last 3 years also.
Really?
Yeah, and then our placement cost is the other big part of our budget, and it was over $2.5 million last year that we spent on placements between foster homes and group homes or residential centers, wherever we have to pay for these children to live.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately
How
not
does that
going
work?
down.
How does that work, Babs, as far as you have to pay to the families that are taking these kids in?
We
Is
have
it-
foster homes in the county. We have 40 foster homes, Tanya,
About
right?
40, yeah.
About 40 foster homes, which all have children at them. And then there's other organizations that will have like treatment foster homes that are, most of those are out of the county. And then there's, depending on the children's needs, it's not always appropriate for them to be in a foster home because of their behavioral problems or emotional issues. Because when you grow up in a neglectful sort of environment, they're not necessarily developing.
And how do you handle that situation when you do have a child that has hostile feelings and
Well, when whenever we have to place a child, the first thing we get as much information about them as we can, because you're trying to match their situation, whatever their issues are, to whatever placement options we have. So we don't want to have kids having to move around. So when we get them somewhere, we want it to be the place that's right for them. So we talk with the schools, we find out kind of what issues they may have had at school, what are they seeing at school, if they've in counseling, what is the counselor saying about them. And so like when we look at a residential center, it's because that child has a lot of emotional or behavioral issues that are just, they need help learning to manage them, or they may need some time to stabilize and to deal with whatever it is, whatever trauma that they've had to deal with at home. So
what about parents, the people that you place the
The
kids
foster care.
into? Obviously they're checked and double checked, which you have to
they have to
do.
go through. Yeah, we are always looking for more people who want to be foster parents, because we never will have enough.
Really? Is it hard to find them, or?
It's a huge commitment. I mean, if you think about it, you're going to take on caring for somebody else's child, and you don't really know what those parents are like, or what's going on with that family. So you're bringing a child into your home, and you have your own children or your own whatever situations that you have. So it's a big commitment, and they do have to go through training, and their homes have to be when we license them. They
That's a training. It's an extensive training
Yeah.
period.
Really?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible.
See, I'm learning a lot about this. I did
Yeah.
not know.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
really
there's a
12
home
different
study.
training.
Yeah, there's 12. Yeah, a series of 12 training topics that they go through, classes that they go through.
Let's take this call here. Hi, you're on the air.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
I have a question. I often see teenagers walking around our town here in Kaya, and it seems like I see some of the kids a lot, and they don't seem to be going anywhere. Are there homeless children in our city, do you know?
There well could be. We haven't, you know, when we get a call about something like that, we will, you know, look into it. But we haven't. I mean, we have gotten a call recently. I haven't heard of anything where they're saying that there's a homeless child. But if there would be, somebody would call us and we would go locate that child and find out what the situation is.
Okay, I just wondered, it just
I
seems
think-
like the kids, I mean, I see them after school, before school, they're walking to nowhere, and I feel bad, you know, I know they don't have a home to go to right away, or I'm not sure what's going on, but,
It could be that whatever's going on at their home, they just would rather not
Exactly.
be
and
there.
they stay away. All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Yeah, that's
Tanya, how do
unfortunate.
you handle the human emotion part of this job, you and your staff? Because, you know, this isn't a job that you're in for the money. You're certainly, it's not just a job to you. You see heartbreak every day. I'm sure you just can't separate that and go home and cook dinner
No.
like nothing
Right.
happened. I've
No,
wondered,
they-
how do you handle that?
But
Right.
you hit the nail on the head here, Steve.
Yeah, yeah. No, these kids become like, they're really our kids, and like, I
Yes.
know when I carried a caseload when I was a caseworker, you know, I'd be talking about my kids, and my kids at home or my kids at work, you know, because that's
Right.
really what they become.
Right.
Sure.
And so it does get very difficult, and the caseworkers, it's traumatic, some of the things that we see and hear from kids. And
I
it's
can
traumatic
imagine.
for us to have to hear those things and deal with. And so all we can really do is we support each other. We have a staff that, you know, they vent, they talk to each other a lot about
have
what they're
to.
dealing with. And sometimes they're really the only people you can talk to, because you can't go home and, first of all, we have the confidentiality of what happens in our,
Sure.
you know, work. But then also just, you don't want to dump that on somebody else sometimes. You know,
Mhm.
they don't have any idea maybe what you just heard today.
Exactly.
And so we've actually brought in a therapist to come help sometimes to deal with
Stuff.
it, to help
Okay.
us process what we've been dealing with. We've had that happen.
Yeah, that's gotta be
make that
tough,
available.
Makes sense. Oh, I could
We've
imagine.
had some
Yeah.
groups that, you know, she'll come in and talk with us, and just to help us.
Okay.
Especially, you know, if you see the papers, there's been some pretty horrific tragedies
Absolutely.
recently, and things that we hear about. And
Yeah, you just can't dismiss those in your mind.
Now, this issue will be on the primary election on Tuesday. And there's not that many in our area that we have coming up. We have the fire levy, the library levy, and this.
Yes, right.
Um,
We're issue 2.
And this is issue 2. So you want to vote yes for this very, very, very important levy. When I first found out about this through Chuck the other day, when we knew we were going to book this particular segment, I first thing I said was, this is so important to make sure these kids are taken care of, especially in this day and age. And as Babs said, it's only $17 some change a year. So that's not going to break you, and certainly it will be a very good thing for Children's Services to get this passed. So,
Thank you very much.
and good luck to you. Very
Thank
good
you.
luck to
Thank
you.
you.
Chuck, thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us on.